Winston Churchill was one of the most prominent leaders of the 20th century. Though he was born into a life of privilege, he dedicated himself to public service. Churchill's heroic legacy of being an advocate of progressive social reforms and a defender of democracy continues to inspire great leaders of our time. As Prime Minister, he motivated the British people during World War II and led his country from the brink of defeat to victory. Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill was born on November 30, 1874 in Woodstock, United Kingdom. Winston's father, Randolph Churchill, was a British lord and well-known politician. His mother, Jennie Jerome, was an American and a very influential heiress. As a child, Winston went to many boarding schools, including St. George's School, Thompson's Preparatory School, and Harrow School. In 1893, at the age of 19, Winston Churchill entered the Royal Military College, Sandhurst. At Sandhurst, many of his peers could foresee that he would become one of Great Britain's greatest war leaders. He graduated from the Royal Military College with honors, 8th in his class of 150. After graduating, Winston Churchill embarked on many military expeditions. As a young army officer, he saw action in British India, the Sudan, and the Second Boer War. After a daring prison escape in South Africa during the Second Boer War, Churchill gained fame as a war correspondent and wrote many books about his campaigns.
He went off to war very early, first as a correspondent and then as a combatant. He had this dramatic escape from prison camp in the Boer Wars in South Africa. That was printed, and he became a kind of national figure at a very early age.
In October of 1900, Winston Churchill's long political career began when he was elected into Parliament at the age of 25. Churchill played many different roles in Parliament from 1911 all throughout 1930. In 1934, after the fall of Germany's President Hindenburg, Adolf Hitler became the dictator of soon-to-be Nazi Germany.
When World War II began to rise out of the darkness of Nazi Germany and Great Britain knew that it was imperiled, there were lots of Tories who said that Churchill needs to be brought back into government.
On September 3, 1939, Great Britain and France declared war on Germany after it attacked their ally Poland. After Prime Minister Chamberlain's failure to properly lead Britain throughout the war, the public demanded a better leader. On May 10, 1940, King George VI appointed Winston Churchill as Prime Minister and Minister of Defense.
I would say to the House, as I said to those who have joined the government, I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. We have before us an ordeal of the most grievous kind. We have before us many, many long months of struggle and of suffering. You ask, what is our policy? I will say, it is to wage war by sea, land, and air, with all our might, and with all the strength that God can give us, to wage war against a monstrous tyranny never surpassed in the dark and lamentable catalogue of human crime. That is our policy. You ask, what is our aim? I can answer in one word, victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory however long and hard the road may be.
On the same day that Winston Churchill became Prime Minister, the Nazis invaded France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands.
Churchill brought a great clarity of thinking of the reality of the threat that Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany meant, not just to that island nation, but to the world. He also brought an ability to mobilize the English language as a fighting force in his speeches, in his radio interviews, in his reports to the nation.
On June 22, 1940, France surrendered to Germany, leaving Great Britain hopelessly alone. Britain's hopes were further diminished by Germany's relentless bombings of their major cities. But Winston Churchill's leadership motivated Great Britain to fight back against Nazi Germany. Nothing was more symbolic of his wartime leadership than his stirring speeches. He could conjure inspiration into his people, regardless of seemingly ominous circumstances.
Surely in this period of 10 months, this is the lesson. Never give in. Never give in. Never, never, never. in nothing, great or small, large or petty, never give in except to convictions of honor and good sense. Never yield to force, never yield to the apparently overwhelming might of the enemy.
On December 7, 1941, the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor launched America into World War II. After the United States entered World War II, Churchill was confident that the Allies would eventually win the war.
That when he got the word that Pearl Harbor had been bombed, he was joyful, not because the United States had been attacked, but because he knew that the United States would have no choice but to get into the war, and now it could be won.
In the months that followed, Churchill worked closely with U.S. President Roosevelt and Soviet Union leader Joseph Stalin to forge an Allied war strategy.
Still I avow my hope and faith, sure and inviolate, that in the days to come, the British and American people will, for their own safety and for the good of all, walk together in majesty, in justice, and in peace.
On May 7, 1945, Germany surrendered to the Allies. By the time the war was over, Britain had suffered great losses. War casualties, both civilian and military, were enormous. Britain's economy and many major cities were in ruins. The road had been long and hard, but Winston Churchill had led his people to a glorious victory.
This is your victory. Victory of the cause of freedom.
In the years that followed after the war, Churchill remained a powerful force in government. He was re-elected as Prime Minister in 1951, where he served until 1955.
In 1951, he was again elected Prime Minister under the impression of a potential expansionist Soviet Union, and people felt that Winston Churchill was the right person to stand up against tyranny.
After his last prime ministership, Winston Churchill continued to participate in the House of Commons until 1965, when he suffered a severe stroke that left him gravely ill. He died in London 9 days later, at age 90, on January 24, 1965.
On January 24, 1965, when Churchill died, the state burial was one of the greatest meetings of political leaders of the 20th century.
Churchill will be a great man down through the ages. And you could not have had a better ally in every sense of the phrase. He gave voice to the common hope of free people. I think he's one of the great men, not just of our time, but of all time.
Over Winston Churchill's lifetime, he was the recipient of many awards. Churchill received the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1953 for his numerous published works, and was also knighted the same year. He was also the first honorary citizen of the United States, and inspired many great leaders such as John F. Kennedy, Harry S. Truman, and Dwight D. Eisenhower.
He was an action hero, he was a historian, he was a journalist. He combined incredible decision-making, very clear decision-making, with amazing rhetorical skills.
In a lifetime that spanned the Industrial Revolution to the space age, Winston Churchill left behind a legacy of politics and literature. By his death in 1965, he wrote an estimated 8 to 10 million words in more than 40 books, thousands of newspaper and magazine articles, and at least 2 film scripts. Churchill also left behind a political legacy by valiantly defending Great Britain against the tyranny of Nazi Germany. Winston Churchill was an effective leader because of his tremendous ability to inspire people, his unique strategic insight, and his relentless passion. Churchill left behind a heroic legacy of being an advocate of progressive social reforms and a defender of democracy. His words, his determination, and his courage continue to motivate great leaders of our time. He will be remembered as one of the most inspirational and heroic leaders of World War II.